I just remember like a retreat.
Okay, let's get started. I'm back on my feet. Still might drowse a little, but I'm recovering well. Anyway, so let's pick up where we left off. I have a couple of recap questions later on, so we'll just go ahead. And we were talking last time about protein functionality, some functionality measurements. We talked about solubility, gelation, stuff you're going to do in the lab. Also, you'll be doing emulsion capacity. So measurement of emulsion, usually measuring emulsion functionality is two terms. You measure emulsion capacity and you measure emulsion stability. But in the lab, you're all going to do just the emulsion capacity. With emulsion capacity, what it means, it's the amount of oil that a certain amount of protein can emulsify. So, in other words, milliliter of oil, the term usually is milliliter of oil emulsified by 1 gram of protein. Usually this is the unit, milliliter of oil per gram of protein. So what you do is you will be titrating oil into a solution of a protein. You prepare a protein solution at 1% protein solution, and then you titrate oil and you homogenize. There will be a homogenization tool that you will use, and then an emulsion will form. So you will have something like this. So the emulsion and the oil, we put Sudan red in it so that you can see the emulsion when it forms and when it breaks. So you titrate and continue titrating, and you start seeing a thick emulsion forming. And then after a particular amount of oil, after 1 or 2 drops of excess oil, what's going to happen? The emulsion breaks. So it's called inversion as well. So you'll see and hear a change. Here the blades of the homogenizer will have a different sound when the emulsion breaks. So you will be able to determine at which point to stop the titration. And then you say, okay, I reached the capacity, the protein no longer can emulsify more oil. So you record the volume that was dispensed from the burette that you're using, and you convert that to milliliter of oil per gram of protein, because you will know how much protein you started with, so you can do the calculation. So this is how emulsion capacity is determined. So quick check about your knowledge from food chemistry. What factors impact emulsification? Okay, Sarah?
Like the amount of denaturation of protein?
Amount of denaturation of the protein, perfect. So if you have a globular protein, you want it to be partially denatured in order to emulsify. If it's just, you don't have enough hydrophobic to hydrophilic balance on the surface, you won't have good emulsification. So the nature of the protein, the structure of the protein. What else? Think of, yeah?
pH.
Yeah, environmental conditions, I was going to say. So if the pH is very far from the isoelectric point, too alkaline pH or too acidic pH, then it will be too much charge, then you will have too much repulsion, so a film will not form, because you need to form a film around your oil droplets. So it will be too much repulsion, proteins will not interact to form a film. So pH is important. Temperature, yeah, temperature is important. There is also the stability of the emulsion when you heat. Yeah, so, okay.
There's different amino acids that make up the protein?
The composition of the amino acids of the protein, you need to have a balanced composition, yes?
Shear rate and shear strength.
Yes, shear, the mechanical shear, but usually what we do, we standardize the method to make sure that you don't have excess shear.
flexibility of the protein, how well it winds up at the surface?
Yes, exactly. Flexibility of the protein, because the protein needs to be flexible to move to the interface and orient itself, the hydrophobic groups to the oil and the hydrophilic groups to the water. So you need some mobility and flexibility of the protein. So yeah, these are some important factors to keep in mind for emulsification. So like I said, emulsification stability is another measure of the emulsion property. So the stability is how long the emulsion is stable before creaming occurs, coalescence of the droplets and then phase separation. So that means the creaming rate, measure of the creaming rate. So this can be measured experimentally by doing a spectrophotometric method, which you're not going to do in the lab, but what it is you prepare a protein solution and you mix it with oil, you homogenize at a particular shear and speed, and then you measure absorbance at 500 nanometer at time 0 and at time after 10 minutes. And then you use this equation over here and you estimate emulsion stability in minutes. Obviously, this is an expedited way to measure emulsion stability. Obviously, you don't want to form an emulsion for a food application that will break in minutes. This is just to compare the emulsification stability of different proteins, for example, or the impact of certain processing or structural changes on emulsification stability. So it's kind of a prediction of how that protein will behave in a food matrix. Okay, so, and I think we talked briefly about this, and I forgot that I had this, and I drew it actually on the board last time in an actual food matrix to determine how much oil gets separated. You can do, you get the meat, for example, you heat the meat, and then you let it settle overnight, and you see separation of oil, and you can determine oil loss. That is in a food system. Okay, so recap question that relates structure to function. So we talked about the importance of structure, and we talked about some ways to analyze structures, and we talked about functionality. And let's recap a little bit and relate structure to function. So if you have a globular protein, this is native, and it has low surface hydrophobicity. That means it's mostly hydrophilic on the surface. Which of this would be correct? Good solubility. I wouldn't pick anything else at this moment. Yes. Good solubility. All right, partially denatured. So heat is applied and the protein is partially denatured. What now?
Jelly.
Okay, anything else? Sven?
Emulsifying.
Okay, anything else?
Improve digestibility.
Improve digestibility? You're all gonna say that.
Reduced overall functionality?
Reduced? Okay, you have better emulsion and better engineability. Go ahead, Ingrid.
Lower solubility.
Yeah.
Because the hydrophobic is.
Okay, so if it was a different protein, this is whey protein. If it was a different protein, this is a good point. Yes, you will have lower solubility, but since it's whey protein, it actually stays the same.
Okay, I don't understand because when the protein partially denatured,
Mhm.
the hydrophobic like exposed to it, but why not whey protein?
Because it's partially denatured, okay? Not completely denatured. Denatured and polymerized. Now what happens? Now lower solubility,
Reduced digestibility?
Reduced digestibility,
Reduce overall functionality.
reduced overall functionality. Good. We summed it up. Guys are great. Sometimes. Okay. All right, so we'll move to the next topic, which is protein modification. So, I told you proteins are great, right? Well, I lied. Partially lied.
Said they weren't perfect. I couldn't believe it that you said that.
So, although they're wonderful ingredients, but they are not perfect. Nothing is perfect. So, always there are ways to make them better. And the ways to make them better is to impart structural change. You induce structural change and to have a targeted modification in functionality or enhancement in functionality. So there are, I want to point out, maybe you noticed, because of the time and because I was slow last lecture due to illness, I had to delete few slides. So you'll notice if I skip slides, just cross them out. I did modify my slides a little bit and deleted few slides just to make sure I finish on time today. Okay, so basically we induce structural change to target a specific modification, a specific enhancement in functionality, nutritional delivery, or all over physiological benefit. So physiological benefits mean, let's say, if we hydrolyze the protein, we might release bioactive peptides, and these might have physiological benefits. So, like I've listed most, if not all, the current methods of modification, but things keep emerging. So things in the future might pop up and would be another method of modification. So the main one we're going to talk about today are enzymatic modification and amylase glycation, because these will be the base for your labs. But there are chemical modification, and this is the most ancient form of modification where chemical reactions are induced. Groups are attached to certain functional groups on the protein, and charge changes and certain functionality changes. But these are banned. They're no longer allowed in the States or Europe due to possible nutritional loss and possible toxicity in certain cases. So they're still allowed in China, like glycosylation and phosphorylation are still chemical modification allowed in China, but no longer in the US or Europe. So that's that. Physical modification is basically applying pressure, for example, modifying the structure of the protein that way. That is one modification. Biotechnology is genetic engineering. Like you can modify, you can do anything you want with genetic engineering. So, but like I said, the main researched and used in industry is enzymatic modification. We'll talk about that. And the growing field is Maillard glycation. So, enzymatic modification, so we think about ingredients, right? We're talking mainly about protein ingredients. So, modifying a protein ingredient by hydrolysis is a very common technique used in research, like I said. And it has several benefits. So you start off with your parent protein, you apply enzymatic hydrolysis, you choose a particular enzyme, you choose the conditions, and then it will result, you will have peptides of different characteristics. You change the enzyme, change the conditions, you'll have different set of peptides with different set of functionality. So there are infinite number of enzymes and conditions that will result in the infinite functionality. So in the soy protein world, there are over 100 different ingredients of soy protein hydrolysates out there, each with a unique functionality. And that's because they play around with type of enzymes and all of that, conditions and stuff. So what happens upon enzymatic modification is you have enhanced digestibility. Mostly globular proteins, whey proteins or soy proteins or pea proteins, they're globular, they're hard to digest. So if you impart partial hydrolysis, then they become easier to digest. So for example, infant formulas, they use whey protein hydrolysate in the infant formula because the baby's digestive system are not yet developed so much. So it's hard for them to digest whey protein. So partially hydrolyzed whey protein will be good for them and will be better digested, and they get the nutrition of it. You will have generation of bioactive peptide, and then overall, and depending on the enzyme used, you can have improved solubility, water binding, water holding, gelation, emulsification, but again, it all depends on the type of enzyme you use and the conditions of hydrolysis. You'll notice here that I said partial hydrolysis, meaning a degree of hydrolysis of 3 to 8%. That means breakage of the peptides. Let's say you have 100 peptide bonds, 3 to 8% of them are broken. That's what DH is. The amount, number of peptides or percent of peptides broken. So limited hydrolysis gives you the results, these results. If you go excess over that, you'll have now flavor challenges. You start having bitterness or sourness from excess hydrolysis. Hydrolysis also may result in reduced allergenicity, but if somebody is really allergenic, reduced allergenicity means nothing to them. It has to be really hypoallergenic for them to be able to consume it. And in order to have a hypoallergenic product, that means you need a degree of hydrolysis greater than 40%. So the enzymes used, usually in industry, they either inactivate after use by heating the sample, reaching a certain inactivation temperature of the enzyme, or there are a lot of industry that use immobilized enzyme. So enzymes on membranes, and they run reactors, and then they do continuous kind of extraction, hydrolysis. So it's very important to control the proteolysis or the degree of hydrolysis. And as I said, the degree of hydrolysis is the percentage of total number of peptide bonds hydrolyzed by the enzyme. So we know that proteinases or proteases, or the enzymes that break proteins, vary in their specificity. That means which bands or which protein subunits they're going to hydrolyze and which peptides will be released. So accordingly, proteases are chosen based on their specificity. And then we control the extent of hydrolysis by choosing the type of the enzyme, choosing the hydrolysis conditions, time, temperature, and pH, and the denaturation of the protein. Here, if the protein is denatured, here's an example where protein is denatured versus not denatured. So this is soy protein isolate. And enzymatic hydrolysis was done using two different enzymes on a denatured protein. And the hydrolysis was random, we were not able to control it because the protein is denatured. So the inside of the protein was exposed, and there is no longer limitation for the enzyme or specificity of the enzyme. Whereas when it was not denatured, using different enzymes resulted in breaking of several unique units. And I showed you this earlier, I think the first lecture. So how does functionality get enhanced? So you will have increased solubility due to increased charge, because when you break, you release carboxyl groups and amine groups, so you have charges, so more interaction with water. So you will have better solivation. And with more charge, you have better thermal stability, so you have more repulsion, less interaction. Also more water holding capacity and gelation due to better interaction, protein-protein interaction, and protein-water interaction. But excessive hydrolysis will result in no gelation. So that's why it's very important that it's limited hydrolysis that will impart improved gelation. But again, this is unique to the type of peptides generated. If the peptides generated can promote gelation, then you would have enhanced gelation. So it really depends on the composition of the peptides generated. Improved balance of repulsive and attractive forces, then you would have improved surface activity. It might be improved emulsification or improved foaming. But sometimes this is not the case. What I meant to say here, sometimes it's not the case, again, because once you use a particular enzyme, you won't get everything enhanced. Either you're enhancing solubility or you're enhancing gelation. If your peptides are mostly hydrophobic peptides, you're enhancing aggregation formation and building of a gel, formation of aggregates and building of gel. If you are releasing mostly hydrophilic peptides, then yes, you are enhancing solubility. So it really depends. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. It depends on the types of peptides that are generated. Okay, so here's an experiment we did one time with a former student of mine. We were targeting enhancement of solubility, at the same time monitoring bioactivity. So we were hoping to have two effects, physiological benefit and functionality enhancement. But we wanted to screen which enzymes will actually give us better solubility. Because like I said, different enzymes will have different peptides generated. So we found out that using different enzymes, we were able to get bioactivity in all, but solubility declined. Look what happens here. So we have prepared a hydrolysis, very low degree of hydrolysis, 5%. Sample was boiled to inactivate the enzyme. We released bioactive peptide, solubility declined. This is the original, non-hydrolyzed. And these are the samples hydrolyzed with different enzymes. So why? The answer is in the question.
The fact that it was hydrolyzed and then boiled it had more complete denaturation of the initial protein itself.
Well, yes, you denature the protein, and also the boiling, you promote polymer interactions. So the aggregates, whatever peptides, were able to aggregate via certain interactions, either hydrophobic interactions or disulfide linkages, especially that soy protein is high in sulfide groups as well. So can form disulfide interchange. So even if they were hydrolyzed, still they were able to form large polymers and precipitate. Well, not all of them precipitated, but the solubility did get reduced from about 85% to 75, here in this case about 35. So, and you can notice that different enzymes have different impact on solubility, because different enzymes release different types of peptides. So that is to the point that I was making earlier. So in the lab, what you're going to do is, wow, time like flies. Ha! You're staying till I'm done. I wish I brought my chocolates to bribe you. But you can walk with me to my office and I'll give you a few chocolates at the end of the day.
If you need to bribe somebody.
Oh, sure, why not? See here? The one that will stay the longest. Okay, so you will prepare a protein hydrolysis in the lab, and you're going to use the pH stat method. So basically, we're going to use a titrator. This is the unit, very similar to the unit we have. So you will prepare a protein solution at a particular percentage, and you put it in a container, like still here. And then you adjust the pH to a constant pH, to a specific pH. I don't know what the pH you guys are going to choose, 7. Okay, so you adjust the pH to 7, and then you adjust the temperature to the desired temperature. Again, I'm not sure, 37?
Yeah.
37. Okay, so and then you have here in this compartment NOH, reservoir of a particular normality, 0.1 or 0.2, depending. And then what's going to happen is there will be, this is going to be put in a water bath to maintain the temperature, and it will be continuous stirring within the sample. So and then you add your enzyme, and when the reaction starts, because you hydrolyze, you are freeing carboxyl groups, the pH will drop. Okay, so when the pH drops, there will be constant monitoring of the pH in this unit, and then NOH will be titrated into your solution to maintain the pH at 7. And this will continue throughout until like 30 minutes or 60 minutes, depending on the time of the reaction. And at the end of the reaction, you monitor the volume of NOH that was used to keep the system neutralized. And you use that volume in this equation right here to calculate DH. So there are some constants that you will be given in order for you to complete this calculation.
Can I add just one
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
real quick?
Yeah.
That will be with the potassium phosphate buffer that you prepared. And if you remember, that was the one buffer where you did not have to adjust the pH, where you prepared the 2 separate solutions and mixed them. So you did not have to adjust the pH because this thing is going to do it for you, just to explain that from the lab.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, industry problem. So I'm going to base the next modification on this industry problem right there. So whey protein is very soluble, that's true. However, the solubility and thermal stability of whey protein impacts its shelf life. So although it is soluble and it is, well, it's not thermally stable, but it is soluble, but once it's heated and stored over time, depending on the protein concentration in the beverage, some aggregation will happen over time, and your protein will precipitate out of solution. So if you're preparing, if you have a clear beverage for athletes, they will, instead of staying clear, they will see a sediment in that beverage, and that would obviously be a defect. They wouldn't want to buy it, so this way the manufacturer will have about 3 to 4 weeks of shelf life, which is a very short shelf life, and it's not industry feasible to have such a short shelf life, because economically it's not also feasible for them. So whey protein are globular in form, and they are heat labile. That means they denature at very low temperature, which is around the temperature of pasteurization. So once the beverage is pasteurized, your whey protein are denatured. At the moment after pasteurization, the protein will stay in solution. However, over time, it will precipitate. So this is what happens. So this is your beta-lactoglobulin, one of the whey proteins. You heat, it will denature, it will expose hydrophobic groups and a free sulfidyl group. And then in the proximity of another beta-lactoglobulin molecule, disulfide linkages will take place, hydrophobic interactions will happen, bigger molecule, the bigger polymer, and then you will have aggregation and precipitation over time. So that is the problem. So whey protein hydrolysis, in fact, can improve solubility. And however, there are issues with the hydrolysate still. So you will have flavor challenges, like I told you, bitterness, sourness sometimes, astringency. Because if you want to produce a beverage that is acidic beverage and you have high protein content, you need to add a lot of acid to reduce the pH to 3.4 to get acidic beverage. And a hydrolysate have higher buffering capacity than a protein, because they have more free carboxyl and amine groups, so they're better buffers. So you need more acid to reach a particular pH. So the problem is bigger here. And disulfide interchange can still occur. So although that you have probably more charges on the protein, but you can still get disulfide interchange. So here's a protein and here's a hydrolyzed protein. They're going to be aggregation upon heating over storage. So this brings us to the next modification that would potentially be better than enzymatic hydrolysis for this particular case, which is the Maillard-induced glycation. So you know the Maillard reaction. So in this case here, we're only concerned with the initial reaction of the Maillard reaction. So there are 3 stages of the reaction. The initial stage is where we have the formation of the Amadori compound. So you have your carbonyl carbon reacts with the amine group or reactive amine group, either the terminal amine or the primary amine on one of the amino acid, which is the lysine. And then you form an Amadori compound, which is essentially a glycated protein. So the glycation occurs at an amine group that would be potentially positively charged. So the net effect would be increased net negative charge because it's blocking some positive charges. So potentially you'll increase the net negative charge of your protein. So again, this is your wonderful complex Maillard reaction. I'm not going to go through that. But we are interested here in the initial stage. We do not want the reaction to proceed. We do not want intermediate stages or final stages where you get your adverse reactions, excessive browning of flavor, nutritional loss, protein polymerization, and formation of mutagenic compounds, and shorter product shelf life altogether. So we don't want that. In order to avoid that, you would glycate under very controlled conditions. So you promote a Maillard reaction by doing so under almost dry conditions, under water activity below the optimum of the Maillard reaction. So less than 0.5. The optimum is between 0.5 to 0.7 usually is where the reaction is the fastest. If we choose a water activity just below that, we are controlling the rate. And if we use polysaccharides rather than sugars, the rate also will be slow. This way we can stop the reaction before it propagates fast and before the glycation is excessive, because you don't want to glycate every possible site, otherwise you lose nutritional value by glycating all the lysine, blocking all the lysine. So you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that your rate is slow and you can stop it and not have it propagate further. So the net effect, what will happen, like I said, you'll have higher net negative charge, and with that you have higher hydrophilicity on the surface, reduced denaturation rate, because with the higher net negative charge on the surface, the denaturation rate will be lower. And you will have reduced disulfide interchange, because if the protein does not denature, it will not expose the sulfidyl group, so that won't be a problem. And then steric hindrance due to bulky saccharides. So these they are in close proximity, they will hinder each other. And then increased solivation, the molecule interact more with water, and then you would have enhanced stability and reduced polymerization or interaction. So, with that, with this great effect, you're gonna work with some glycated protein in the lab and do some testing. Are they gonna incubate their samples? Or are they will be,
Or are we doing it? What is your question?
are they incubating for glycation or are we doing it for them?
Oh, probably we'll be doing it.
So basically, this is just to illustrate how it works. We get, in this case, it's whey protein hydrolysate. We mix it with dextrin in a buffer at a particular pH, or pH 7 maybe, and then we incubate in a desiccator with a salt solution specific that will give you a water activity of 0.49. And then, oh, okay, this is animation done by Courtney at some point. And then we incubate at 6, that's not me, just doing it on its own. Incubate at 60 degrees, and samples are pulled at different intervals of time. What actually Courtney did, she monitored glycation at different time points so that she can determine which time point would be optimal for glycation. And I think this step will be done for you, and you will only get a sample that is already glycated for 96 hours.
I think we're gonna vary the time.
Oh, so they have this
In
stuff.
different groups, we'll have samples incubated for different amounts of time.
Perfect. Wonderful. That's even better than experiment. So you will be doing something like this. So what you will be doing, you're measuring, you will get samples at different time points of incubation, and you will be measuring the extent of amidori compound formation. The amidori compound have specific absorbance at 304 nanometer. So you will prepare your sample and you'll measure absorbance at 304, and you're going to monitor the amidori compound by just looking at absorbance. So in this case, there is the whey protein hydrolysate incubated without dextrin, and this is the hydrolysate incubated with dextrin. And you can see that as time goes by, the absorption at 304 increases and then plateaus towards the end, where some amidori compounds start to convert to secondary products in the second stage. So at this point, you would want to stop the reaction and not take these samples, and usually you want to go in and do like either the 72, 84, or 96, where your amidori compounds are peaked but not really plateaued. So you'll see that. You'll be looking at browning as well at 420, just to confirm that the reaction did not proceed further than the initial stage. And you will also look at a blockage of amine group, right? They're going to do OPA. So here what you see is a result of a reaction with the ophthaldehyde. Ophthaldehyde react with free amine groups. So the less amine available, you will have obviously less absorbance. So, but then this gets converted to percent loss of free amino groups per gram of protein. With glycation, you're going to lose amine groups, so you're monitoring extent of glycation by looking at blockage of amine groups. So again, you will do that over the different incubation time, and then you will see at which time point you have maximal blockage of your amine groups. Lastly, I have 3 more slides, or 4 more slides. Good. I think I'm in a good shape. I can take questions.
So is protein polymerization always bad?
It depends on what form. So if we say protein polymerization in a film formation around an air bubble or an oil droplet, then this is not bad. But if protein polymerization that resulted in sedimentation, that's bad.
So are there enzymes that I don't know, working on to like protein polymerize? Is that
Say that again.
so like to polymerize protein, are there enzymes specifically in those? Can work?
Oh, to polymerize protein, yes. So there is a slide that I actually deleted, the transglutaminase enzyme.
I was just gonna ask them, like the ones who took food chem this semester with me, what did you learn about transglutaminase? Where is it used? Yes, gluten-free bread, yes.
The rice bread, for example, and there was a slide that I deleted, actually. So, yeah, no, polymerization of protein, you got me with this question. I forgot what you were referring to. Yes, in some cases you want polymerization if you want rheology or imitation of gluten. Yeah.
So when you get to your level of glycosylation you want to be at, how do you stop it?
You take it out of the incubation.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so you will be working with different protein ingredients in the lab. So common protein ingredients are the caseinate proteins. So there's sodium caseinate is the main caseinate protein used. Whey protein, we have whey protein concentrate, whey protein isolate, whey protein hydrolysate, soy protein, soy flour, but mainly soy protein concentrate and soy protein isolate. So an isolate is 90% or greater protein purity, that is. And then you have the egg protein, albumin is the egg white, and then there's the yolk protein. Cereal proteins, like gluten. There is something called vital gluten also that is used as an additive to enhance the baking properties. Meat protein is gelatin and the myofiber protein. And of course, they're hydrolysate. And the list doesn't end here. These are your traditional ingredients. There are, like I said earlier, emerging ones. Pea protein is on the rise, and there are other ones that will soon be, the potato proteins. Did you hear about that? Potato protein. Imagine like the potato has like 1% protein. They managed to extract that, and it's actually a very functional protein. But very expensive to produce. There are the canola proteins that they're trying to produce ingredients from. So algae, we talked about insect proteins, yum. So one of you or a group of you will be working with sodium caseinate. If you remember, I told you last time, you are going to run SDS gel, but you're not going to see the normal distribution based on molecular weight. So caseinates are usually run on the urea gel, and there are several there are 3 types or main types of caseinates, alpha, beta, and kappa casein. This is a sodium caseinate. This is a sodium caseinate hydrolysate. And this is the alpha, this is the beta. This is how they look on urea gel. And they're very close in molecular weight, 19 to 24 kilodalton. So the caseinate is an open structure protein, is another globular protein. It's a very amphiphilic type of protein. That means it has distinct hydrophobic and hydrophilic clusters. Make them natural emulsifiers. So they will have, I can predict now, that they will have the highest emulsification capacity. Isn't that the case every year?
They will see.
She doesn't want
the
to.
answers.
She does no. She doesn't want to give you the answers. Okay. But that's that. Whey protein is a globular protein, as I said, and it's composed mostly of beta-lactoglobulin and alpha-lactalbumin. So this is your alpha-lactalbumin and this is your beta-lactoglobulin. This is the wonderful SH group, or the troublemaker right there. And this is a typical solubility curve for whey protein. So here they're looking at solubility by monitoring turbidity basically, and over different pHs. So whey protein is a very unique protein in terms of its solubility. So if you see here a native, this is the square is the native. So the native remains soluble even around its isoelectric point, which is very unusual to different type of proteins. The isoelectric point is the point at which you don't have net charge, basically. But the protein dips a little bit around this, but remains close to 100% soluble throughout the different pHs. Why is that? Because, you know, even at the isoelectric point, it's still very hydrophilic on the surface, and only a small portion of it on the surface is hydrophobic. So not enough hydrophilic pull between different molecules, even though you don't have that much or net charge. But once the protein is denatured, it denatures at close to 70 degrees C. Once the protein is denatured, it's open up, it exposes more hydrophobic groups. So when you don't have net charge, they're going to come together and aggregate, and they will lose solubility. So are they monitoring solubility over different pH ranges?
I'll see if there's time for that.
But did we do that in the past?
In the first year, yes, not last year.
Okay. Yes, if you get to do this, then you will notice this is the typical solubility curve that you will notice if your sample is whey protein. Questions? Okay. So soy protein. So I changed this slide a little bit to clarify. So this is a soy protein isolate. This is SPH, stands for soy protein hydrolysate, hydrolyzed with alkylase, hydrolyzed with pepsin. So you'll see here that the alkylase hydrolyzed beta-conglycinin subunits and the pepsin hydrolyzed glycinin subunits. Okay? So if we look here, this is your beta-conglycinin and this is glycinin, the larger molecule. So 7S is for beta-conglycinin, 11S is the glycine. This is just the sedimentation coefficient. But anyway, don't worry about 7S and 11S, but the beta-conglycinin is a better emulsifier, and the glycinin is a better gelation agent. Okay, so the ratio of beta-conglycinin to glycinin impact the overall functionality of soy protein. And this ratio varies depending on the variety of the soybean, where the soy protein is being extracted from. So here, if we look at this figure right there, this is gelation hardness of the gel figure. So this is the control, that means this is SPI. This is a protein that was hydrolyzed by alkylase. So what happens when you hydrolyze the beta-conglycinin, the gelation power was not really impacted. But when you hydrolyze the glycinin, the gelation strength went down extremely. So breaking down of this component resulted in poor gelation. As for emulsification, the opposite. So both actually hydrolysate had better than the isolate emulsification capacity, but what's more important is the stability of the emulsion. So you not only form the emulsion, so how stable is the emulsion? So the stability of the emulsion that was where the beta-conglycinin was hydrolyzed dropped severely. Okay, and that kind of confirms that one is better for emulsification and one is better for gelation. Okay, recap. We're done. This is just the last recap question, and we're done. All right, so if a protein is glycated, either it's a hydrolysate or if it's an intact protein, no. Seriously? I'm gonna wait and eat the lollipop. John. Huh? What did you say?
You're asking is it like glycals?
The glycated protein.
Yeah, it's
huh?
glycated.
Which one of these fits?
Okay.
They
Amanda.
have lower solubility because the negative charges are masked by the carbs.
No, actually. I think you guys, I went probably too fast on this. I feel bad. What? Wait a second. Here. Increased net negative charge, increased surface hydrophilicity, reduced denaturation rate, reduced disulfide interchange, increased steric hindrance due to bulky polysaccharides, increased solivation, interaction with your solvent, thus enhanced stability and reduced proteins interaction.
It blocks more of the positive charges and makes them have a more negative charge.
So, look, doesn't want to animate. But anyway, so does that mean lower solubility or higher solubility? Higher solubility. Okay. So higher solubility. No, went too fast. Yeah, yeah.
Improved digestibility as well?
In fact, it depends. So there were studies that showed improved digestibility and some studies showed reduced digestibility, depending on the extent of glycation. If every possible site was glycated and with bulky, large molecular weight saccharides, then some results showed that it decreased digestibility. But if you glycate it moderately with a short chain saccharide, actually it causes partial opening of the protein and it enhances digestibility. So in some cases, you might actually enhance emulsification and gelation with glycation. I only talked about solubility, but depending on, again, the extent of glycation and the type of saccharides attached, you might, and the protein itself, the characteristic of the starting material of the protein, you can get these two. What about a hydrolyzed protein? Okay.
Improved digestibility.
That is for sure. That's the safest. Okay. What else?
Good solubility.
Good solubility, maybe.
Your better gelation.
Maybe. Yeah.
Improve thermal stability?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Reduce functionality.
Maybe. You will have reduced functionality if it was excessive hydrolysis. Yeah. You might, there's not one enzyme treatment will improve emulsification, gelation, and solubility. It depends. That's why it might be better emulsifier, better gelation, or better solubility, depending on the peptide release, the enzymes used, the hydrolysis conditions used. Okay? All right. think I'm done. Is this mine to keep?
If you like.
Thank you.
That just means I was conditioned by my mother very well to get these.